Hey guys, so what's been happening in the hobby this week? Well, I thought I'd have a little chat about Soulblight Gravelords and give some revised or updated thoughts now that third edition has dropped, and had a bit of time to, spend some time with the book and yeah, just have a few more thoughts on it. I'll leave a link to my earlier video that I did on this subject, but that was during second edition before third edition had dropped. So, I guess, yeah, now that this has happened, the book obviously works a little differently, it plays a little differently, and obviously with this little model in front of me, I obviously like it enough that I'm collecting them. So, it's definitely, yeah, I've got a few more thoughts on it. So I thought we'd go through some of that, and while we're doing that, I'll be painting this Necromancer, so you'll get some nice little sped up footage of that, and I'm going to use some blue greens, classic colors I like, so building from a dark base and moving up through greens into like a bright color on some of these robes, and yeah, maybe some other little funky little things in there as well. Definitely some black. I want this to be a classic Necromancer, as this will be the first, I guess, proper undead model that I've painted coming back into the hobby and back into AOS. So yeah, I think it'll be fun, and we'll just go through some of those things that I think the book's doing well, and maybe some of the things that I still feel are a little bit lacking, or that sort of thing, coming from an old school undead player. And yeah, there's still some things there, but overall, obviously, I feel like it's a decent book. Yeah, because I'm collecting them. But yeah, it's for maybe for undead players coming back into this might be interesting for you, or not. If you're not really into undead or whatever, then I'm not sure why you're even watching this. But yeah, if you want to listen to the first round of it, that was really coming from the outside looking in. When I did that, I'd only just decided to start doing AOS, and so when that book dropped, it yeah, some of it was cool, some of it I was a bit disappointed, or not disappointed, but just like I would have liked to have seen some other things added into a book like Soulblight Gravelords. But yeah, now the third edition, it's looking interesting. So yeah, I guess let's get into it. So now that the book has been out for a little while, and third edition is here, and we're seeing how it interacts with the new rules, I guess we can finally see what I guess Games Workshop intended for the book, and it definitely makes a lot more sense. So initially, when I first I won't go over all of my thoughts on the previous video, but one of the things that I felt was, it's more, I guess, from a lore perspective, that I felt was a little bit lacking, and those thoughts or thematic elements to the book, and I still feel like that's the case even now with the way it works with third edition. I still feel like they missed an opportunity to sort of flesh out some other aspects of the Soulblight lore, and the way the structure is set up, because they really are still lacking a focus on necromancy. It's not really there in the book. It sort of is in some of the characters, but you don't really get that sort of, there's no Necrarch bloodline, or even sort of named character necromancer or anything like that. There's no Heinrich Kemmler, obviously. There's no one there to really back up that side of the flavor of undead. I guess they've kind of left that for Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and not wanted to put it so much into the Soulblight book, which is fine, but you would think at least one of the vampires would be particularly interested in necromancy and that sort of thing, apart from obviously Nagash and so on. But that's still not really quite there. And for those of us out there, those old school undead players, that's part of the fun, that necromancy thing, and even for new school players that like that stuff. So it is kind of missing, I think, still from the book. And even though the new bloodline, the Vicross or whatever, they seem to have the bonus for, they've got Belladonna, who's a really great wizard. So, that's great. So you kind of get it, but they're kind of like more a Strigoi vampire, that sort of like animalistic style one. So it's kind of weird that they have kind of both elements in one. I guess that's how they got around it. They just kind of lumped them together. But I still feel like they missed a little opportunity to, produce a few more models in a different style that would have helped, I think, round it out. It feels like the circle is just missing a piece. And yeah, so those thoughts I still feel like are the same. However, from a gaming point of view and a structural point of view, that's where I think with the way 3rd edition works and how this book works, I feel like that's where I want to sort of revise my opinion on it. And I think it has come out of the gate in a slightly stronger position than what it originally appeared when it first released. And I talked about that, in my opinion, having books come out just slightly stronger than they should be is overall, not too much though, but overall better for the book than to come out underwhelming, because especially when it's a new book in a new edition, as we all know, the books get stronger and stronger as the editions go along, and you end up with books that usually can't hang with the other books like 2 or 3 years later as we get into the later stages of the edition. In some cases that's not true, but most of the time it is, unless the structure, that core structure of the design of the book is very good, then it can hold up, but it's very rare that happens, right? Most of the time they get waylaid off to the side and they don't ever really compete, and so that's why I think that that's the case. You want to have it a little stronger so it can survive a few rounds of new books coming through and still stay within the the I guess the fat middle, as people call it. But so I think that in that sense, the Soulblight book is in fact a little stronger than it first seems, and also deeper in terms of combinations of synergies, combos, and sort of that overall kind of army building stage. There is actually a lot more in there than it first looks like from the outside. And I guess that's really where my revised thoughts come from, is from the game point of view. So obviously Manfred is amazing, and I feel like that's a just a really great piece. And now that you see the way the 3rd edition rules work with all of those heroic actions and all that kind of thing going in, and the way the battle tactics are working, and just the constant back and forth that's going on in the game now, I feel like that makes the Soulblight book far more dynamic and far more interesting. So there's more combinations of ways in which you can achieve your wins in the game that aren't just based on maybe some more classic tactics. You've got tons of little options that you can do, there's a bunch of characters in the book that you can utilize, and even some of the lesser characters are actually really interesting and can be kind of useful in certain situations. The main, obviously, it still comes down to a couple of key characters, like most books do. Manfred is key. Even Neferata as well is really good, but Manfred is probably the mainstay of, I would imagine, of most armies these days. But then Belladonna is very good, and even Rodica the Beast, there's plenty of combinations there. And then depending on how you want to go with your troops, obviously Graveguard have turned out to be amazing, and even zombies have great abilities and can be buffed in really interesting ways, and they've just got a bit more play than maybe they used to. And so even skeletons, so you do have these like interesting combinations, and a lot of that comes down to also the some of those cities characters that got entered, that sort of what's he called, the grave digger guy, that can heal the zombies and that sort of thing. There's a bunch of little mini characters in there they're all pretty interesting, and you could add them in. Whether they're super game like tournament winning level is another story, but for casual competitive games and casual games, there's a ton of combinations in there that can be really fun. Even on the competitive side, if we have a look at that, Soulblight are doing very well. They're competing, and with a number of different builds. It's not all the same build, and that's one of those key things. Generally speaking, if you're looking at the meta at the moment, we are seeing a lot of variety of armies actually doing well. Even Flesh Eater Courts have won some stuff, and so on. So obviously the meta is wide open, but Soulblight are doing very well and are usually placing quite well, and that's a good sign. And that they're not all exactly the same list. Some people are trying out Nagash and doing that kind of combo. Others are using the other Mortarks, the Manfred Neferata combos or things like that. There's a ton of different ways that you could go about it. Even the new Vangorian Lord does a bunch of interesting things in certain combinations. So definitely we're seeing a wide range, and so from that point of view, I feel like the book is actually pretty fun, and that's really what's got me to get into it, is that there is enough depth in there for me to enjoy, and that was something that a little bit of my gripe with the Flesh Eater Courts, even though I love them and I'm collecting those. You know, they've got so much potential. The book's a little bit one-dimensional. It doesn't quite have enough in there, and I was worried with this Soulblight book that it would be kind of the same, and from, you know, a casual glance, that's kind of what it looks like, right? But the more you dig in and the more you see the way it interacts with the third edition, that's really what's lifted the book, in my opinion, is its interaction with third edition. Sort of adds this whole other layer to the book that isn't otherwise there. So if you're thinking about getting to Soulblight, definitely do it. If you're an undead player, there's a lot in there that's satisfying. As I said, it doesn't quite have the full necromancy build that you want, but there are ways to get that summoning going and get that magic going and things like that. You know, there are definitely combos and characters that can lift the game, and as I said, the way it works with some of the core rules, and the core items, enhancements you can get to actually buff your characters, plus cogs as well, the endless spell. There's a few ways in which you can actually soup up your Soulblight list to actually make it feel like a necromancy, you know, summoning magic build. So I do think it's worth it. I think it's worth getting into. I think that the new models are beautiful. You're going to see me, apart from this Necromancer that I'm painting right now, you'll see me. I've got a couple more on the go that I'll be doing full tutorials for, and a whole bunch of undead because I love it. You know, it's one of my favorite factions in Warhammer, apart from Nurgle and, you know, Chaos and that sort of thing. You know, undead, death, the death faction is probably my favorite. So much so, you know, that I've done my own brand. If you have a look in the links in the description, Blight of Gods is my personal brand. You know, and you can see the influence there. I love all that stuff, you know, all the undead stuff and demon stuff. It's my favorite thing. So, you know, definitely if you're thinking about getting back into it, or you're not an old school player but you're just new to AOS, or you're thinking about changing armies, I do think Soulblight are definitely worthwhile. And there's so much in terms of painting and modeling, there's so many choices, and it has a wide scope for ability range, so you can do a very quick and fast scheme that anyone can do, like an entry point one, or just a faster speed paint style, and you can go all the way up to the high end. It has a full range, and it's one of those armies that allows that, and so many different color combinations. So, you know, from a hobby point of view, it's probably one of the more satisfying ones to choose, because there's so much scope for you to do your own thing and personalize it, and I think that that's really cool. So yeah, my closing thoughts, I guess, is that yes, I still feel like the background or lore thematic side of things is a little bit missing in some areas, but in terms of game mechanics and you know, just and obviously the model range, I think those two things are actually pretty damn awesome, and some of those new models are just really beautiful, and you'll have a great time with the modeling and hobby side of things. And from a gaming point of view, you're definitely going to have a good time. It is a very satisfying army to play with, and you'll be able to do different builds over and over again and not get bored of it. And so there we go, just some updated thoughts on Soulblight Gravelords, and yeah, what I think I suppose they're like currently with third edition and the book. And yeah, I think overall it's pretty cool. And you know, I've managed to finish this little Necromancer, and it's been a real pleasure. It's my first model back, painting undead or death faction, you know, in Warhammer for AOS, so it's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy that this is the first model. Yeah, super fun to paint this one. It's got such great forms in those robes. You know, I just wanted something simple and enjoyable to paint that would get me back into the mode of the undead stuff. And yeah, just a lot of fun. And my classic blue greens and stuff like that I seem to do on everything. You know, you find that when you're painting stuff, you just always end up doing, you know, certain colors you sort of go towards and that sort of thing. So it's been really fun getting this one done, and definitely you'll be able to look out for more. I'll be doing more tutorials on more of the undead characters and stuff like that, because they're just a lot of fun to paint. Yeah, so I hope this has been informative for you. If you have liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe button, it really helps me out. And I'll leave an overview and a close-up picture of this guy at the end, just in case you're interested. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one.